Chadondo East Member of Parliament Robert Chagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, who is currently in America for further treatment after the Arua chaos scandals, has today come out in his social media accounts and posted on his view and opinions on whatever happened in Arua. This is what he has to say. What exactly happened in Arua? My story. Fellow Ugandans, friends and well-wishers from around the world, I'm sorry, I have taken a bit long to write to you about the trials and tribulations for which you all stood with me. It's been tough days as I recover from the physical and mental trauma I endured. I am overwhelmed by your support and words of encouragement. I cannot repay you in any other way except sticking to those values which bind all of us together: justice, equality, and human dignity. I will be communicating more in the coming days, and where possible send my appreciation to the different individuals and organizations in the post. However, I want to recount what exactly happened to me. I am very grateful to my wife Bobi and my lawyers who narrated the world these events, but I also wanted to tell this sad story personally. I felt more compelled to speak out after reading the many posts written by President Museveni and other government officials about what happened. I read the things they were saying while I was in detention and found them absurd, to say the least. I was shocked on how they tried to downplay the atrocities committed by security agencies on innocent citizens. So let me set the record straight. It was 13th August, and it was the last day of campaigns in the Arua municipality by-election. As always, we had a great campaign day. As I left the rally, I was convinced that our candidate, Honorable Kassiano Wadri, would win the election. So we moved from the rally at about 5:30 p.m. and the people followed us, singing songs of freedom and chanting, "People power, our power." Together with Honorable Kassiano and a few other leaders, we parted with the multitude, bade them farewell, and went into Royal Hotel where Honorable Wadri was staying. We watched the 7 p.m. news from the hotel lobby as we took tea and took stock of the day's events. It was of course very exciting to watch that day's news. The anchor said we were clearly ahead of the other candidates, and the television relayed images of the massive rally and procession we had had on that day. Shortly after, I decided to move to Pacific Hotel where I was staying, so as to rest after the very busy day. It was at that point that I sat in my Tundra vehicle in the co-driver's seat. The gentleman who was driving the Tundra that day is one of our drivers, not Yasin, in brackets not Yasin. He moved out of the vehicle to call other team members who were supposed to drive with us. He took a bit long and I moved into my other vehicle, a Land Cruiser, which was right next to the Tundra and whose driver was already seated on the driver's seat. We immediately set off for Pacific Hotel. I did not even see what happened after, or how late Yasin ended up on my seat in the Tundra. For clarity, he had been driving another vehicle that day. I had started taking the stairs to my room when this driver came running to say that Yasin Kauma had been shot. I could not believe it. I asked him where he was and he told me they were parked outside the hotel. We paced down and I saw with my own eyes my friend and comrade Yasin giving way as he bled profusely. I quickly asked a team member to take him to hospital and another to call the police. We had not stepped away from that place when angry-looking SFC soldiers came beating up everyone they could see. As soon as they saw me, they charged saying, "There he is," in Swahili. So many bullets were being fired and everyone scampered to safety. I also ran up into the hotel with a throng of people who had gathered around inside the hotel. I entered a random room and locked myself in. It is at that point that my media assistant shared with me Yasini's pictures, which I tweeted because the world needed to know what was going on. I could hear the people outside and in the hotel corridors crying for help. I could also hear the soldiers pulling these helpless people past the room in which I was saying all sorts of profanities to them while beating them mercilessly. I stayed in the room for a long time. At some point, I heard soldiers pull some woman out of her room and ask her which room Bobi Wine had entered. The woman wailed, saying she didn't know, and what followed were terrible beatings. I could hear her cry and plead for help as she was being dragged down the stairs. Up to now, that is one experience that haunts me. That I could hear a woman cry for help, yet I was so vulnerable and helpless. I could not help her. I stayed put for some hours, and I could hear the soldiers come every few minutes, bang some doors on my floor or other floors, and go away. At different times I would sleep off, but was always rudely awakened by the banging of doors and the impatient boots that paced throughout the hotel for the whole night. In the wee hours of the morning, the soldiers started breaking doors of the different hotel rooms. With rage, they broke doors, and I knew they would soon come to my room. I therefore put my wallet and phone into my socks. I also had with me some money which I had earned from a previous musical show. I also put it into the socks. A few minutes later, a soldier hit my door with an iron bar, and after 2 or 3 attempts, the door fell in. We looked each other in the eye as he summoned his colleagues in Swahili. Another soldier pointed a pistol on my head and ordered me to kneel down. I put my hands up, and just before my knees could reach the floor, the soldier who broke into the room used the same iron bar to hit me. He aimed it at my head, and I put up my hand in defense, so he hit my arm. The second blow came straight to my head on the side of my right eye. He hit me with this iron bar and I fell down. In no 1 minute, all these guys were on me, each one looking for the best place to hurt. I can't tell how many they were, but they were quite a number. They beat me, punched me, and kicked me with their boots. No part of my body was spared. They hit my eyes, mouth, and nose. They hit my elbows and my knees. Those guys are heartless. As they dragged me out of the room, they continued to hit me from all sides. After some time, I could almost no longer feel the pain. I could only hear what they were doing from afar. My cries and pleas went unheeded. The things they were speaking to me all this while, I cannot reproduce here. Up to now, I cannot understand how these soldiers, who probably had never met before in person, could hate me so much. They wrapped me in a thick piece of cloth and bundled me into a vehicle. Those guys did to me unspeakable things in that vehicle. They pulled my manhood and squeezed my testicles, while punching me with objects I didn't see. They pulled off my shoes and took my wallet, phone, and the money I had. As soon as the shoes were off, they started hitting my ankles with pistol butts. I groaned in pain, and they ordered me to stop making noise for them. They used something like pliers to pull my ears. Some guy unwrapped me and instead tied the thick cloth around my head. They forced my head below the car seat so as to stop me from shouting. Then they hit my back and continued to hit my genitals with objects. The marks on my back, ankles, elbows, legs, and head are still visible. I continued to groan in pain, and the last I heard was someone hit me at the back of the head with an object, I think a gun butt or something. That was the last time I knew what was going on. By the time I became conscious again, I was somewhere in a small room with a small window. My legs were tied together with my hands with very tight scarves. I was bleeding from the nose and ears. I was in great pain. My whole body was swollen. I was shaking uncontrollably. Two soldiers came in. I can now recall that they were visibly pleased to see that I was still alive. They came close to me. One of them apologized in tears about what had happened. "Bobby, I'm sorry, but not all of us are like that. Some of us actually like you," he said. The doctors were on their way to treat me. I stayed in the same position, and after a few hours, about 4 soldiers came in and lifted me on a piece of cloth. One of them took a picture of me. I hope to see the picture someday in my life. As we went out, I read Arua Airfield. Somewhere I was taken into a waiting military helicopter and taken to a place where I later found out was Gulu 4th Division Military Barracks. It was at that facility that some military doctors came in and started giving me injections. At that point, I could not even complain, as I was not yet fully alert. I was very dizzy and had not eaten or drank anything for many hours. My sight was very weak as well. I spent the night there. Late in the night, I was picked again from the detention facility, with my head covered with a dark cloth that felt like a t-shirt. I was taken to Gulu police station, where I was forced to sign a written statement by an officer called Francis Olugu, in the presence of some other officer who I later learned is the CID head of Gulu. I can hardly recall what was contained in that statement. I was then returned to Gulu military barracks, put on a metallic bed and handcuffed on it. Very early morning, I was picked from this room and taken to another very secluded. I was taken to another very secluded and dirty room where I was put on another bed, handcuffed again and injected with a drug that immediately sent me into a deep sleep. The following day, I can recall that at some point, Honorable Medard Segona and Honorable Asman Basalira came to me. My efforts to rise and speak to them didn't yield much. The moment they saw me, they could hardly hold tears. I have a faint relocation of what they told me, but their visit was very short. I was later carried into a hall where I saw soldiers dressed smartly. I would lie if I said I fully appreciated what was going on at that point. I was later told that I was appearing before the General Court Martial. After a short while, I was again carried into a military helicopter. When it landed, I was put into a vehicle and driven to another place, which I later found out was Machinde military barracks. At Machinde, I was now fully alert and had a drink for the first time after 2 or 3 days. I saw doctors come in several times and they gave me all kinds of injections. At some point, I tried to object, and these guys could hold my arms from behind and inject me anywhere. If I asked what drug it was, the guy would say something like, "This is diclofenac. Can't you see?" At some point, some guy came in and wanted to stitch my ear, which had an open wound. I pleaded with him not to, and he relented. All the while I was spending the day and night with my hands and legs cuffed until a few days later. Thankful, although the scars are still visible, the wound on my ear healed. It was after some time at Machinde that I was able to see my wife and my brother Eddie Away, who came in with some lawyers, some friends and dignitaries from the Uganda Human Rights Commission. UHRC. I will never forget the atmosphere in that room. People started crying upon setting eyes on me. At that point, I could not sit, walk, or even stand by myself. I was still swollen and spoke with great difficulty due to chest pains. My teeth were shaking and the headache was unbearable. I am thankful that the UHRC had a report which I later read. At least it captured in part the state in which they found me. As the government agency mandated to fight human rights violations, I am eagerly waiting to see what actions they will take to ensure that no Ugandan is taken through this ever again. Not even President Museveni. I cannot wish what happened to me upon anyone, not even those soldiers who violated me as if they were beasts. I remember two things about the visit. Not even those soldiers who violated me as if they were beasts. I remember other things about that visit. Despite the pain I had that day, I remember forcing a smile when they told me that I had been charged with unlawful possession of firearms. I was told that 3 guns had been assembled and said to have been found in my room. Could not believe that the state would torture a Ugandan so bad and then frame him with possession of guns. I did not stop thinking about that for all the days I spent at Machinde. How ruthless, how callous, how inhuman could these guys be? It was also on that day that I was told about the alleged stoning of the president's vehicle. The other thing I remember is this: I asked my visitors if we had won the Arua election. They told me we had won with a big margin, and I thanked God. That strengthened my spirit because I knew that the people were with us even in the kind of sufferings and indignities we were being subjected to. I was very sad as I am today that they murdered my brother Yasin in cold blood and did not allow me to bury him. They told me about my other comrades who were also incarcerated, and I kept praying for them. Of course, every visitor had to speak to me in the presence of military personnel. Although I was very pleased to see all visitors, when I was released, I read the comments which some of the visitors made to the press, particularly government officials. I felt sad that we have a lot of dishonest, cold people who don't care, reading on someone's tragedy for political capital. I want to believe that we are better than that, dear Ugandans. Anyway, while at Machinde, I was briefed that I was expected in court on 23rd August, about 9 days after I was taken there. Some military doctors continued to come in to inject me, wash my wounds and give me painkillers at night on 2 occasions. I was put into military vehicles and driven to Kampala Imaging Center for scans. I could not object or even ask questions. I am worried because one of the machines seemed very dangerous. As soon as I was placed into it, it was switched on. The doctors ran to a safe distance and started seeing me from a small window. It was there that the radiologist told me on how one of my kidneys and back had been damaged during the assault. I was, however, not given any written medical report by the military. It was clear they wanted me to appear in a better shape at the next time of my court appearance, and they did everything possible to achieve that. A day or two at Machinde, this guy was candid. This guy was candid. He told me it was in my interest to eat well, take in all the medicine, and look better by 23rd, or else they would not allow the press to see me, and I would be remanded again until I was presentable enough. They even forcibly shaved my hair and beards. When I hesitated, these soldiers told me, "Gwe Osaga, you are kidding." 2 of them held my hands from behind and shaved me by force. At some point, they insisted I must wear a suit for my next appearance before the court-martial and asked me to tell my wife to bring me one. I also insisted that I did not have it. At another point, I hesitated to allow some eye drops for my right eye, which was very red and swollen. I always wanted to know what drugs I was being given. These guys held my arms from behind, and one of them literally poured the entire bottle into my eye. Later, the military doctor also provided me with a crutch to aid me in walking. At that point, when I was able to stand up, although with difficulty. When you hear all this, you may think that all our soldiers are brutal. Far from that, most of them are wonderful people. There are many I interacted with during this ordeal who were extremely professional and sympathetic. It was hard to comprehend how people serving the same force, putting on the same uniform, could be very different in appreciation and approach to a citizen of Uganda. When I was taken back to Gulu on 23rd, I was very happy to see the people who came to court, including family members, comrades in the struggle, and lawyers. I cannot explain how I felt when the lawyer for the army said that charges of unlawful possession of firearms had been dropped. I did not feel vindicated. I was not excited. I was not moved. I just cannot explain how I felt. I just remembered what these people had done to me, and tears came to my eyes. Shortly after, I was rearrested right in front of the courtroom and taken to Gulu prison. At the military prison, I was wearing a red uniform. This time I was given a yellow one. Friends, you cannot believe that you can be happy to be in prison, but that day I was. I was very happy to leave solitary military confinement and meet up with the colleagues who were being held at the Gulu prison. That night I was taken to Lacho Hospital in Gulu. Other tests and scans were conducted. At that point I was feeling better, especially psychologically, since I had reunited with my comrades in the struggle. Anyway, ebisigadde twali tubitutegeera awo. Sobodde obbawaako ku byasobodde okunnyonnyola ebyali Arua. Wabula Honorable Kyagulanyi agamba essimu ye, waliwo essimu ye gy'ataddeko wano, n'agamba you ignore calls from 0752013306 kubanga the number was taken by soldiers, and also ignore communication from other social media accounts and pages under my name apart from this one. Okay, ebyo kati minja biraba ku social media ye. So twali tubuuzayo pages nga 3 naye ebyo bino ebya bulijjo okuva ku kooti, ebyo kati tubimanyi nga bwe byagenda mu maaso. So what's your take ng'omuntu? Musobola okumuwa Kyagulanyi, musobola okumuwa advice through his Facebook or YouTube account anywhere. Ffe we tuli nnyo, our ears are on the ground.